And with that, welcome to the July National Forum. And exciting topic. It's a phase one refresher about lines of inquiry. But the sexy part is going to be I'm going to show you how we've done it with AI. So let's dive into today. Okay, so today's topic, going from a bunch of evidence that's all over the place to organizing it on our chart and establishing really good lines of inquiry. Where do we get them from? And how can we use AI to speed up the process with a lot of accuracy? And we've had to do that for some very large scale assessments that we've done. And we've had our postgraduate students, the BD3 folks, actually practicing these skills as well. As you know, BD3 is a crash course on AI, along with the other things that we do. Before we started cranking out questions, there's four big areas that we look into to help us generate questions. And the first one, you already saw it on screen, gives us about 70-80% of all the questions we're going to get out of our entire board. And what was that? I'll just put it up here. The analysis of defenses, right? Once we got our defenses on the board, we can analyze each individual one for effectiveness. That means we have to have a question for each defense. And if we have evidence, we can ask a focus question. And if we don't, we can simply ask, did we meet this requirement? So the key is to identify the requirements that should have prevented the event. So that's the key there. Someone give me another area that we explore to generate questions.
Looking at the process maps.
Okay, so process maps, Pareto charts, other spreadsheets, what are those called? What is that whole area that we do? That's data
Yes,
analysis.
data.
Okay, so there's a whole bunch of fault tree charts. There's all kinds of, there's literally 100 data analysis tools just from Lean Six Sigma. I have that book. There's two more big areas we need to look for. So we've got data analysis. A lot of it is quantifiable data. The defenses. What are the other two big areas?
Equipment interfaces.
Yes, the human machine interface. So that's another key area. And we look at whether the tools, the equipment, the materials involved, and whatever the event or problem is, if that's creating a problem for us. So let's explore it. Those have requirements, even like rubber gloves for electrical shock prevention. You have to buy them for ASTM something or other, right? So we can look up the requirements for the tools, equipment, materials that are used. Was it the right equipment? Was it used properly by the humans? All right, then there's one last area.
What about like previous corrective actions and things that have been taken on previous events?
Certainly, you could look at previous corrective actions, and I would put that over here under the data analysis in terms of looking at your CAP database. And the way I love to do that is by Pareto charting your CAP databases. And we can analyze self-assessment reports that way and see what's been done. If you have negative trends of issues, that begs the question about the corrective actions. So all that falls into analyzing available information like CAP data. It's a good one. There's still one more big area. It's on the chart, right up there in the top line, right next to the human machine interface, the behavioral causal factors. So we do behavioral analysis, right? So we have analysis of defenses, the human machine interface, a behavioral analysis, and that's typically a survey or some other way of getting at risk behaviors in error likely situations, and the data, whatever databases we can analyze. If it's equipment, we can do fault trees. So these are the things that we put on the board. And from here, we're going to get the performance insights we need to generate great questions. Okay, next slide is now how do we keep the bias out of our questions? That is a big plus in terms of what Blue Dragon brings to the table. Because, and I want to bring in Chad, Lieutenant Commander Chad Blankenship here, who just left the Navy not too long ago, who used to teach root cause, who's done a lot of fact finding and investigations. And what can you tell us about bias, Chad?
Besides the fact that I think everybody is that walks in the room that isn't given a rule set not to be. because our human brains are always seeking out information. So I fell in love with asking unbiased questions because it helped me see years of critiques and hot washes where bias crept in from pretty much everybody that walked in the room based on their knowledge and skill set. So it's definitely a skill to learn to tamper those biases down from us as the Blue Dragon people and from them as the people that we're going to work with and talk to and make sure that we're getting the right information.
Thanks, Chad. And how critical is trying to keep bias out of our story, out of our analysis, out of our questions? Anyone from the labs want to weigh in? And are you successful in doing that, or do you see it creeping in? Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly critical. I was introduced to bias through when I worked as an intelligence analyst, and so I'm a little more familiar with it there. But it can really skew the results of an intelligence analysis, and I could see how the same thing would happen in analysis here. You focus in on your bias, and you miss other clues or facts, or so.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And there's a great thing about avoiding bias, because bias is what prevents investigations or analysis from being repeatable. So because of the way the other methodologies do business, it introduces a heck of a lot of bias. And so different people will get you different results. And that's one thing that we talk about here at Blue Dragon is, doesn't matter who's leading the team or who's doing the process. If you follow the process will work very well. And a different set of team members will give you the same results because it's all based on facts and evidence and a lack of bias. And the other part is you have to try to avoid the bias in phase 2 as well. That's a lot more difficult because it's not obvious. People are introducing bias the minute they talk to you, and you just have to have enough information coming in from different parts of the organization to ferret out what's really factual, what's really accurate. And that requires facilitation skills, communication skills. Yes, Ronnie, another BD3 graduate from Blue Dragon. Actually.
Yeah, Rob.
Yep.
I was thinking about the when we introduce bias, it undermines our own authority in the investigative process. Because when you do go to phase 2, that I think is going to be ferreted out, if not by us, certainly by those we interview. So at that worker level, supervisor level, and managerial level, someone's going to see that we've that those questions and then the answers, that cause effect chain, has been led down a certain road because that was what we did. And so I think that undermines some of our credibility with a management team if they see that creeping in, either in the questions we design or in the way that we develop those cause effect trees.
Oh, without a doubt. Absolutely right on. So, and in some cases, it's not too hard to really identify where the bias has crept in. And in fact, all too often, your seniors, your senior management, your executives are introducing the bias themselves. They will steer the investigation. They will lead it to where you want it to go. And worst case scenario, they'll tell you where to land the investigation, so it marries up with previous corrective actions that they've already taken, and that makes it a lot less expensive when you can take credit for what you've already done, even though it's obviously addressing the symptoms because you haven't done the analysis. All right, so back to the story here. We want to get bias out of our questions and therefore the rest of the analysis. So we tie every single question to something very specific. It has to be a specific requirement, a Pareto chart, a process map, a fault tree line item, any kind of data, and we have to anchor it, and that's why we use cross-referencing. Every single question, if you recall, is cross-referenced in our charts, and this is why. You can't make stuff up, and that's what I mean about the do not do this, right? There's reasons why we avoid certain types of questions, and the worst one is your own bias introduces these curiosity questions. Your brain runs amok, and you start thinking of things to ask, and unfortunately, in places like the military, they skew towards who's to blame. Who did that? Who was responsible? They love accountability. and we start looking for a belly button so that we can disqualify them, shame them, and retrain them. All right? Blame, shame, retrain. Classic. All right. Also, you can't expect people who are in there in phase 2 sitting in a room to get up and go do a research project. And one of the main ones that I always find is training. You don't expect them to know their training status and every single of the 100 things we're required to maintain up to date. They're not going to know. So we'll do the training research ourselves, and don't ask that kind of question in the room in phase 2. And knowledge test, don't challenge them. How many of you can remember every requirement and every SOP at your plant? Robbie, how many procedures do you have at Los Alamos? How many requirements per procedure at Los Alamos?
Many.
Okay, Amy.
Hundreds, thousands.
Can you list all the
thousands
requirements? It's ridiculous. No. So why are we trying to put people on the spot and stump the chump? No. It would be nice if we had everything in AI, by the way. So that's what I'm going to show you. We can have all of our SOPs in your LLM, your local LLM. It's going to make things a lot faster, a lot better, a lot easier for us to do this. Otherwise, we're doing a manual word search through all the PDFs, which is what I've been doing for decades. Okay, accusatory questions, self-explanatory. That puts whoever's in the room on the defensive, bad posture, bad energy, less cooperation. And there's no need to ask accusatory questions. We're just trying to get at the real issues, and we're not looking to blame anyone right off the bat. We're exploring the requirements that should have prevented the event, or the physical defenses, or the cyber controls that should have kept us safe, but somehow they didn't, right? And it could have been anybody in that chair. Any human could have fell into this trap and got hurt or created an event. It just happens to be these humans in this instant. So that's not what we're after, okay? And then, of course, our own biases will cause us to create lead the witness questions, which is, of course, I want you to give me back the answer that I think it is. And my favorite one is, well, it's because the procedures were so poor, right? Okay. You just created an entire procedure revision update process as a corrective action. That's terrible. Anything else before I move on? Any other comments on this, keeping bias out of the whole story?
Yeah, Rob, can you go over missteps that you might have had in the past? And so again, what I mean by that is it's all great when we're writing the first initial question. Most people can get that right out the window, but when you get into phase 2, when you start asking these questions, have you ever misstepped, and how did you recover from it? Because some of us haven't gotten to that point where we've done live action with a room full of people we're trying to get to help us get to the problem.
All right, so good question. You know how it's really hard in class to simulate how phase 2 is going to go, right? That's going to be tough. So what do? Well, if you have some kind of a problem and ask one of these, they're going to, first of all, tell you, we don't know that. How you expect us to know that? Or we would have to go find that from somewhere else, and we'll get back to you. And then, of course, now you have an action item to wait for someone to give you the information. But I don't have a set pattern, because everything is so well laid out up front that if there is a misstep, just be as polite as you can and apologize if you have to. And I'll tell you, the thing that I've had to apologize for is for using colloquial language that didn't appeal to a broader audience. And I'll give you a simple one. I was calling some friends of mine and folks that I work with, because I worked in Paducah, Kentucky, Western Kentucky. For 2 years, I was out there as a senior policy advisor at the uranium disposition facility, and then DUH-6. I was calling them Bubbas. My friends, the Bubbas, because they were all wearing overalls, and these are Bubbas. And a person was insulted. They thought that was demeaning, derogatory, and they said that, and I said, okay, I apologize, and I won't use that term again. And I haven't used that term ever again. So I don't know, Chad. Hopefully, if you do this right, that's not going to happen. You're not going to have a misstep, right? You're not going to do any of these don'ts over here. And you're tying everything to a fact. If you recall how we start out phase 2, every single line of inquiry starts off with, here's the requirement, here's the evidence, and we just need to know why this happened. Completely unbiased. So that will keep you out of trouble. And by the way, I designed it that way because when I did get into trouble, that was maybe 2-3 decades ago. I don't even remember what happened. But the way this is all modeled is because it happened 2 or 3 decades ago when I was first working this out. And I kept iterating and improving on the process. All right, very good. Hey, raise your hand, ask a question at any time. We're just going to keep going here. Last thing I'll say. So organizing our questions. Notice that if you understand systems theory, humans are in the middle of this pressure cooker. This is one ginormous system that impacts the human and everything they do. So you've already seen this. This is in your training. It's the AI, machine learning, disruptive technologies, right and left, all kinds of sophisticated software, right? So where do we put all that stuff on our chart? So these are questions for you. Look at all the building blocks of our phase 1 chart. Where are we going to put software and hardware on our charts? Cyber controls, which is software, is going to go into the defenses, the standard operating procedures and requirements, right? Because the requirements, the defenses are admin requirements, cyber controls, and physical. So the physical hardware and stuff and other tools, equipment, that's going to go under what's HMI, human machine interface. So we got a section for hardware, and we have requirements section, the defenses for cyber controls, which are usually programmatic, right? Or other requirements. So that's what I mean. This is where that's going to go. What about how organizations behave and what governs the organizational structures? Anyone?
The causal behaviors, the behavior.
Bingo. So
Yeah,
we're going to question how the organization behaves during behavioral surveys, during our behavioral analysis. So we're going to have error likely situation surveys to where the organization is putting the humans at risk. And how the organizations are structured comes in, oftentimes, isn't it section 1 of your QA program manual? Organization, section 1. So we can look at how the organization is structured and ask questions about that, right? So everything on this chart has a place. Everything that affects the human has a place to be investigated on Blue Dragon. Programs, procedures, policies, obviously those are the defenses. The standard operating procedures go into our line of defenses. Big data, key performance indicators, metrics, all of that goes under the data analysis section. Complex machines, critical infrastructure, human machine interface. And lastly, social cultural pressures. Any guesses?
Behavioral analysis.
Yes, ma'am. So we are covered. We completely cover the environment that created the situation that resulted in the event. And it's not going to be about the human who's a dirtbag making mistakes and trashing the place. We don't work in environments like that. You know, we have responsible individuals, mostly, who follow procedures, mostly, but because we're human and we bring in that human factor, we're going to figure out a way to get around stuff, not willfully. If it's willful, that's a different problem. All right, so that's it for slides.
What if you're working through one of these and you come across something that looks willful? What's your off ramp?
Yeah, great question. And I'll tell you where we cover that. So think about part of the class, Amy, part of the training, and I said there's a few red herrings that you should not touch. One of the things requires a gun and a badge. One of the things requires an HR background and maybe legal training. And one of the things require a skiff. Right. So if it's willful, let's say someone did something really bad at one of our nuclear plants. If it's sabotage or anything like that, that's FBI material. Right. And if it is willful, you're immediately into the disciplinary process and removing that individual. So we don't tolerate willful. Right. Humans will make mistakes, but willful stuff goes into criminal intent. And that's dealt with people with guns and badges. HR matters, sexual harassment, discrimination, those kind of things. Those are dealt with the HR folks. And then anything that's classified, we don't deal with either, unless you're equipped from the start to deal with classified information. And then we've done that. We've worked in a SCIF at Sandia on one of the issues. All right. So hopefully that answers your question.
It kind of does. I'm just kind of thinking, have you been in a situation where maybe you're asking questions, you're in that phase 2 and you come across that? Like, do you stop the activity? Or you just glance over it and come back to it when you have a
Yes.
I haven't run across that yet, but
No, yeah, absolutely. We're going to stop the activity, and we're going to actually figure out where to go with this next. And usually what I say is make sure you capture everything you can and transfer it over with a date and timestamp to whoever, whether it's HR or another part of the organization, because you have to picture yourself on the witness stand with somebody else's lawyer attacking you as to, you knew this when, what did you do? And you need to be able to say, this information was provided to HR at this time on this date, and here's the transfer. So you're clean.
yeah.
Right. So yes, you got to learn some of these red herrings, and we put a red herring in the Sally exercise for that reason, because I don't want you to be caught flat-footed if you run into these, where all of a sudden someone brings up classified information. Stop. Don't talk about that. Right.
Time out.
And it could be an incident of security concern. It could be an IOSC you've generated. It's just out of boom. There you have it. Write the report and then let them investigate.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So I
Yes, ma'am.
piggyback on what Amy's saying. So here a couple of years back, we ran to something where they spun our LOIs and the questions we were, asking stuff. We actually came across like willful neglect to bypass policies and procedures, which
Oh,
could have, turned out to be really bad.
right.
So we just went through, we captured the information, but at the end, and when we did our final report and stuff, we actually communicated to the supervisor, and they took the appropriate actions to address it. But it's just something to where it's like, okay, I don't think it was HR, but it was something to where, hey, that's the procedure says this. You said we don't do this. Okay, well, as a result, we captured it and provided it to the supervisor.
Right.
So
No, that's all you can do, right? That's all you can do. And I tell you, my own one time this happened, it was actually a falsification of records issue in Ohio, actually the gaseous diffusion plant in Ohio. And we were asked to investigate this falsification of records issue. And it got so nasty and pointed, it was a manager, and it got nasty because the environment that was created above the manager created the situation where that manager felt compelled or empowered to falsify radiological records. And the analysis got too real, and they marched their lawyers in telling me we had to change the results. And that's when I said, well, we've done our job. I'm leaving. You're paying me, and you can do whatever you want with this information. And I did, and I left, and I was paid. They got another team leader to change the report because it was too damning, so they softened it up before they let it out. Politics. You will run into politics. You'd be naive to think that the politics do not exist. So be careful. Cover your bases and transmit everything. Good communication. And imagine yourself going to court. Am I clean? Right. So a lot of what we do is for that reason, to hold up in a court of law on the analysis side and to be clean if there's anything else that comes up. Okay, good stuff, good conversation. Let me go into some of the sexy stuff I have prepared for you here. We got a couple of examples that were actually done by our post-grad students. One is the Texas power grid failure, and one is the Dolly collision with the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. Those are recent events, 2021, 2024. And the charts were put together by groups of our BD3 postgraduate students, right? So we're doing all this based on available information. And this is not what I wanted to show you, right? Here's the DALI, and here is the Texas grid failure. So classic charts, you know the charts, you know the drills. But let's talk about the DALI and the use of artificial intelligence. So I have 3 key documents for this, and I wanted to go over these so you get a sense of how you might tackle phase 1 faster with accuracy. And it starts with everything you know about the event. So in this case, first of all, we queried the internet for everything to do about the DALI incident. And if you just start looking at the references here, and if you scroll with me and you get the AI download on the references, let's see. Well, let's just run to the end and see what the number is. The number is 162. So AI, ChatGPT, does a phenomenal job researching the internet and giving you a terrific base of information. This is what happened. This is everything we know from everything that's out there. So that's something that if you had that capability built in to your local large language model, and you had access to condition reports and as much information as you can, that's a great starting point. So that is where we started. Now, what do we do with this? That is a source document. So we take that source document and create a prompt. So we take the prompt, and using the DALI file as the input, we start to create what we need, right? And you can do the entire phase 1 with artificial intelligence help, right down to create the problem statement if you like. That's oftentimes not a big problem. I often never use AI for the problem statement. Anyway, then you could talk and ask it to find the applicable line of defenses. You're very specific, with specific to the Texas power grid failures. What is the collection of defenses that form a system that state, federal electricity energy grids have in place that collectively should have worked together to prevent the incident? That's pretty simple, right? And I'm very specific about the administrative requirements, the physical barriers, the cyber controls that are required. And then I tell it I want them numbered, right? So I want to group the defenses into themes, and I'd like them numbered, D1, D2, etc. And then I want you to analyze these defenses. And I give it lengthy prompts as to, hey, I want you to look at them. I want you to find deviations, refer to the Blue Dragon training that I've given you. So it helps if you've inputted some information about how Blue Dragon works, like your student guide. Your student guide would be a great input into your LLM. All right, so for deviations that you find, give me lines of inquiry questions and number them like so. And here's how I want you to output these. Tell me the symptom where something went wrong. Tell me the defense that was in place that should have prevented it, and tell me the line of inquiry that you would write. Right, so very clear directions. Another rule, do not ask who questions. Another rule, do not use accusatory language. Right? And then the output. But we can't tell if the requirements were met. And this is where we have no evidence. So a whole secondary set of instructions saying, look, I don't have evidence, but just ask me a basic question. Did we meet this requirement? Because this should have also prevented the event. So identify all of the specific requirements that were in play. Some of them we know something about, and some of them we don't. So we write those 2 types of questions straight out of our Blue Dragon training. And then affinity analysis, I like to group them. So I always say, hey, group them by themes. And also, finally, I want you to look for behavioral stuff. Look for surveys. Look for studies on this particular topic. Number them S1, S2, S3. Right? And then examine, and for trends and information that you find interesting, write me some questions. Okay. And then I want a glossary. I want a list of all the defenses, all the references used in the APA 7 format, and I want it to be compatible with MacBooks. So it's kind of a little thing that I learned, right? Okay, so now what do you get? You get this document. You get a document, you get an output. And here it is. So, and you see the references coming in here, right? So we've got the problem statement, the framing of the problem. We've got the systems inventory. And here it is, system and subsystems. Shipboard electrical. This is the dolly ship, right? Oh, and let me get my puppy to come in. He's already begging to come in the door. Hey. Okay, come on. Hey, lay down. Good boy.
Where you get your dog too, Ronnie?
Stay there. Oh, the minute mom leaves the house, the dogs come up here and want to be with me. So anyway, that's how it goes. Okay, so you got electrical distribution, propulsion, steering, emergency controls. You get it, right? All the things that should have prevented a container ship from smashing into a bridge. There they are. The bridge team, pilotage, tugboats, harbor traffic, bridge ownership, design, protective systems for the bridge. You get it, right? So it identified all that stuff. And now we have a timeline of events that we can put copy and paste straight into our chart as far as timelines. So we've got the systems inventory. We've got timelines coming our way. Now we've got the administrative defenses. Here they are. ISM code and safety management system risk assessments and safeguards. D1. D2. Whatever Solus machinery, I'm not even sure what Solus is, but I like it. And here's the references, by the way. So everything is cross-referenced with citations. Plan maintenance, pilotage, bridge resource management, tug use, bridge-to-bridge communications. All right, here's the physical defenses. So now we get into physical defenses. And here are cyber defenses. So everything I've asked for, it's giving me. All right. And now we got into the performance evidence. So here we go. Here are the things that went wrong. Here's the performance that we identified for each of those areas, right? Worker warning failed while roadway traffic closure succeeded. Okay. So now comes the final output. These are the lines of inquiry and how I wanted them. Here's my system, which goes into the yellow post-it. Here's my defense that I typically put in a blue post-it. And here's D1.1 and D1.2 that I put into my tan post-its. Here's defense number 3, defense number 7, defense number 12. So these are grouped by failed defense, right? And here's another set, defense number 4, 9, 13. I don't remember how these were grouped, but they're all here. And then additional defense questions where there is no evidence, right? Defense number 2, defense number 11 and 13. We're not sure, so we're asking more generic questions. And from all of this, we have everything we need to populate the chart. Now, studies, surveys. This gets at some of the potential behaviors and other things that might be out there. So it found 4. It told us what they were and what red flags were relevant to the dolly. Okay. And then we've got lines of inquiry questions as 1.1, 1.2, 2.1, 2.2, and so on. So now I got a really comprehensive package. And now I have a cross-reference of each of the defenses and the lines of inquiry that cover those defenses. Just a nice table to have. A glossary, the defenses that are referenced, administrative, physical, and cyber, and regulations and standards, and the citations right there. And then the citations in APA 7th edition, which is what I like. It's the most prevalent out there. So I always like citations in APA 7th edition, 30 citations. And that gets transferred over here to the dolly drawing. Before I go on to the Texas grid failure, what are your thoughts?
I like it.
Yeah.
How do you validate it? Like, how do you, it's a lot of information. How do you validate it?
All right. I would like to bring in our validation expert who created, he's now on revision 7 of a triple tier validation prompt that we have for all of our products, Chad. And by the way, Chad has surpassed me in the use of AI in terms of Blue Dragon. He's just been hammering away ever since he graduated from BD3. And maybe he has a little more time on his hands, but nevertheless, Chad's done some great work. Chad, let the group know how we validate.
So again, you have to first tier it into the different types of information that you're willing to have. And what I mean by that is like a tier 5 would be information. Like, so most of your LLMs are internal only. If I'm aware of how most of the labs are working, so you shouldn't have a lot of information that would be invalid. Like for us, we definitely have to validate it all because when we ask for stuff, it goes to the cloud. It has to validate. So tier 1 would be specific like source papers or like investigation data points. Tier 2 would be peer-reviewed papers that have been validated by somebody. Tier 3, it basically we have tailored all information into 5 tiers. So what we have it do is go validate that tier against each other and the tiers against themselves, and then bounce it off of, can we find any other information that is valid? And like I said, we do a triple source verification by having it bounce off different levels of information from, like Keith said, there's 168 sources on that one. For some of what you have, you may not have that many. The thing I was going to ask everyone here is, are you uploading surveys that the company's doing into your LLM so it has that information available? And are you uploading the CAP databases into your equivalent that you have into the LLM model so it also has access to those and previous Blue Dragons that you've done so that it can continue to build off of the information?
Good question.
I'm not aware of a lot of that. Robbie may have more insight into it, but I think that's something we're interested in building. I do know that we've, as a lab site, LANL has put their policy into our enterprise LLM, whatever it is, our AI portal, our I don't know what they're calling it. But I think we are missing a lot of data streams in there. I've been using Safer because it is incorporating quite a few of those data streams, but not all of them. So there's, we don't have I don't think we have a good solid resource like that. And we have the ability to work outside of our enterprise AI, but we have to be very, 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 very careful about what we put into there. I use it for very general inquiries. If I'm going to do something more specific with real data, certainly within our portal. So no, I think we need to do some development as a site on our internal AI.
It's a wonderful thing. I can tell you this from a couple of recent clients, both of them nuclear utilities. Over at Vistra, they have NucLearn, ChatGPT offshoot, and at Ontario Power Generation, they have Chat OPG for Ontario Power Generation. And the beautiful thing there is they have their entire suite of procedures as one data set. So when you're querying your LLM, whether NucLearn or whatever, you can tell it where it is that you need to look for information. You're allowed to go to the cloud for simple things, but when you're looking at internal company stuff, there's lots of different things you could go look for, but you can call up from their different data sets the procedures, which is, I thought, very cool. Okay, so when I ask for, give me all of the references and all the requirements for what happened here in this instance, we load up the event and as much description as we could, push a button, and it spills out all of the procedures that pertain to that activity. Then we go to the secondary prompt, which is, okay, within these procedures now, tell me what specific requirements apply to these specific sequences that are taking place. And now I got my thing. And from there, you can go to the third level, which is, okay, now look for deviations and write questions. And for those that there are no evidence of deviations, and ask a basic question. That forms my line of defenses. And that can go a lot quicker than the old school manual way, which would take weeks. So that phase 1 is the longest phase. and that kind of falls into what Einstein found out, and Drucker and many others, is that to learn to ask the right questions takes the most amount of time. So to do it right takes time. Now, AI is helping us accelerate that time. It is a force multiplier. But in every case, you have to do the prompts. You have to be smarter than AI and know that what you got out of it is good, is valid, right? So you have to validate, like Amy asked. So we have to be smart about using AI. We call it the responsible use of AI. So, but by all means, it's here to stay. It behooves you to go get it, learn to use it. And again, our BD3 forces you to use a minimum of 3 LLMs, if not 4 or 5. Compare what each one of them does with different homework assignments. From folks that have never even, they didn't even know how to access an LLM online, some of our students, after going through Blue Dragon, now they're really, really cooking.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I use AI extensively, but you see a lot of irresponsible use of it. People will just throw something out there and you start looking through it and you're like, this is gibberish. Where did this come from? And, you know, they don't understand hallucination. They don't understand validation. They don't understand training. They don't understand all the things that make AI useful. And so I see a lot of irresponsible use of it. And it scares me a little.
The funny thing is a lot of people think that using AI is actually what we know is just a chatbot. They think that AI is ask a question, get an answer. That's how they use AI. That's, you know, Gemini on your phone, ask a question, get an answer. And that's just a chatbot. That's not really using
it's like power. Fancy Google.
Yeah.
When you get the report generated, is it still a draft form like that? And then you have it vetted, you know, through the team before it
Well, we have
publishes?
AI vetted. We use another prompt to vet the results. And once we're happy, then we start, and an admin does this, copying and pasting from that Word document right onto the Post-its on our chart. That's just an admin thing, right? Transfer all the info to the chart wherever it belongs, right? I have another example for you. The Texas grid failure. Let me share my screen and we'll go through this one quickly as we're coming up on the hour. This one broke AI. Chad and I broke AI with this one. All right. So enough said. So I have an agent trained up with, you can imagine, every single 800 slides from all my training, all the blogs, all the white papers I've ever written, right? And I asked it to become an expert on root cause analysis, on behavioral sciences. So I asked AI to do all of this to start with, and then we began giving it these kinds of prompts. So it takes a lot to get to this point. I don't know that just taking this, copying and putting it in your LLM is going to do you any good. It doesn't have the background. So anyway, using our internal agent, we told it, here's the Texas power grid failure. And we have another document that gives it every detail that we know out there, just like we did for the DALI. And so, okay, analyze the information that talks about the performance, the grid failure. Research anything else you want to go find. And then find me the lines of defense. This is almost identical to the previous one. Do the analysis of defenses. Notice this looks identical. Here's the output, how I want you to give it to me back. Here's questions where there is no evidence. And affinity, clump everything in themes if you could. Surveys and studies. So you notice that it's a very much the same prompt as before. And what did we get? Okay. Well, we got a massive 32-page document, right? And we didn't get this the first time. This is maybe the 10th iteration of trying to figure out what was going on. So we have to break it up a little bit. But we have a really robust document that allows us to populate phase 1. And this is a major event that's out there on the cloud. But we feel like we could have done a better job than they did in Texas. Same thing as we say about the NTSB, the National Safety Transportation Board, when they go investigate things like the Dolly ship container incident. We could do it better, faster than what the NTSB is doing. So if anyone has a link to the NTSB, please let me know. But amazing number of organizations, if you will. The systems inventory was massive and sort of outlined a whole lot of things. And on the chart itself, you could see that there were so many elements to the Texas power grid. There was ERCOT, power generating companies, a lot of them, transmission and distribution, natural gas, Public Utility Commission, Texas Railroad, Federal Oversight, FERC, NERC, etc. All right, so there was a lot of things going on here with a lot of different organizations. And okay, once we got that, we also got timelines of all the things that happened, and this was very complex. There's a lot that took place and nearly wiped out about 65% of the grid. And then we got into the defenses. And after the defenses, cyber defenses, and the performance that we noticed where there were performance breakdowns. So it segregated that. And that brings us to the lines of inquiry. Here's the symptom, here's the defense, and here are the questions. D1.1, D1.2, D1.3, right? So this helped us get a big jump on how we would analyze all this. So the more information, obviously, the better. Okay. And here is a defense to the LOI. So this is just a nice way. And it did that by itself. I don't think that we asked for it. Here's a glossary. Here are the regulations, the sources, the citations. So yes, we teach everything has to have a citation. Here's the references in APA 7th edition. So here's the list of references and citations for this bad boy. And there were 100. Nice round number. Okay. Let me stop there. The whole point of this is to let you know that you need to learn AI and you need to learn to apply it. So if your company or your lab is behind the times in terms of an LLM, tell them it's extremely valuable. And as long as you follow the rubric of the Blue Dragon and do it right, you're going to do some good work faster, right? Because what AI lets us do is work a lot faster than 100 of us could. So it's a force multiplier. But it can't replace us as humans in actually analyzing the results, validating the results. And you'll always hear me say, we need to stay smarter than AI. AI does not know context. It, garbage in, garbage out. And you can't let it hallucinate on you. You have to deal strictly with facts so it does not hallucinate. All right, and with that, let's open it up for questions. What do you think? Are you there yet? Are you there to the point where you can do this level of work at Oak Ridge, Los Alamos, Livermore, Brookhaven? What do you guys think?
I'm still worried about the validation point that Amy brought up, because we have seen hallucinations and we have seen citations called out within our programs. And then we find out that the AI actually created the citation or created the information because it was just using your prompt. So I still think that's a huge issue, and we're going to have to figure that out. Come talk to us. We have a triple validation tool that Chad created, and we use it religiously because that is the case. And by the way, I experienced that years ago when I wrote a paper. It was going to be a peer-reviewed paper for BioPharm International. I got published with a PhD from Ireland, Nuala Callan. Anyway, so Nuala and I put together this paper. I had like 30 references. And one of the last things you do is you go validate all your references and citations, a lot of which I got just online. Guess what? Like 25 out of 30 were made up. Completely fake.
That's a huge proportion.
Huge. Unbelievable. I was so upset, and I realized you can't take anything for granted. So It said, journal so and so, section 5, section 3.1. Here's the requirement. And you go look that up, and it's like, oh, there's nothing like that. What the heck are you doing? So anyway, I had to go research myself one by one, pull the correct reference, pull the right citation, pull it in, and not let AI do it for me. That was a bad lesson learned. But I'd rather do it myself than get some peer to tell me, you guys made it all up. This is trash.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, in your validation tool, I forgot what I was going to ask. It's basically, do you teach the use of that validation tool in BD3? And does I mean, a lot of AI is kind of a black box, right? You put in your query, your prompt, and you have to be very careful on how you prompt it so you get that connection to the references and everything. So can you see how it's validating? I mean, is it giving you kind of line by line how it's doing its validations, or?
Ronnie, why don't you talk to that? Ronnie is a recent BD3 grad.
Yeah, I was just about to post in the chat here, but one of this very specific validation lines that I put in my AI settings is specific to sources. Do not invent paper titles, author names, URLs, or book references. If you cannot name a real verifiable source, say, I don't have a verified source for this. So when it goes through the process of building, and this is also built into that prompt, that if I'm saying synthesize, I'm asking it to create something. Mm-hmm. If I'm saying summarize, it's giving me something a little bit different. And then I give it the ideas about what I want it to synthesize against, and then verify my claim for logic and make sure it's waterproof. And then what are all those references? And then once it publishes that first draft, then I go back and say, let's verify that all these are real. And since I'm kind of in the medical career field, a lot of the stuff I'm going to reference is available on PubMed. It's out there available for me. And so then there's another reference line that says, let's make sure that all these URLs are live and active, that this is accessible to the public. When they click on this, it will go there. And so at each section in the building, it comes in there. And then its underlying rules for building anything for me is that we have to have verifiable sources. And that goes back to Rob's first point in our eliminating bias, when it says, hey, Ronnie, you've come up with a great idea that no one else has written about, and it's not verifiable by anything aside from your own personal experience. That's when I have to say, then it says, I can include this, I can include it, but we're going to have to say that this is your lived experience, and this is an opinion of the investigator, not because it's been published in research. So I think that's part of that's the science meets the artistry of this, is that I'm using it to do that. And from Chad's triple source verification bit, it does a really good job at running everything through there pretty well. And then as I get ready to go move beyond just a draft and start to say, I want to push this out to the public, let's go through, a specific prompt that says, go through, verify that all of these references align in text. And then I have that source that is active, live, and is not a hallucination, is not built out. And one of the things just about AI that I think I'm still learning is because it's getting so much better and it has this human-like feel as it communicates back to me, I end up giving it personifying emotions. And I'm like, I don't want to hurt its feelings by telling it some really strict rules. But I work with another guy, John Black, who I borrowed some of this from as well, and his rules for AI are just so exacting as a Marine that he dictates exactly what that AI is supposed to do and whips it into shape. And then really what it does is it gives me back a lot better detail, because it's not trying to please me, it's trying to tell me where I'm making a fool of myself, which I really appreciate. And then it keeps me from publishing anything or putting anything out there that hasn't been verified and doesn't lean on hard data.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yes, and all that AI serious prompting, and some of our prompts are 7 pages, 10 pages long, and the validation criteria and all that. That is all available to the BD3 folks. And I'll just throw this slide up, which I had left over from last month, that we do have a BD3 cohort starting. Well, there's one underway every day. We have a continual BD3 cohort. And we now have the option of allowing you to take it at your leisure. In other words, at your own pace. There's 18 assignments. You could do them one a day or over 4 weeks, or you can do it one a week or two a week. And we meet to discuss every morning at 9 a.m. We have the post-grad group meet from 9 to 10 every day without fail. And we talk about the homework assignments that some of them are doing, and we talk about these key concepts, and it's enriching. We have some really phenomenal discussions in this postgraduate class that I'm learning. We're all learning from each other. We're building nuances and building and making our whole thing better. So I'm really excited about what going all out with BD3 is doing for us. Anyway, okay, back to the group. Any questions, comments?
No, I thought it was great. And for our IDP, I'm going to put in for the BD3 through Renee, my supervisor.
Yes, individual development plans. This is great. And give yourself 6 months to complete it. Well, for the next year cycle. Yeah, I encourage folks, if you really want to understand, not AI, it's part of it, right? Doing AI is important and it's part of it. But what you learn at the postgraduate level about the behavioral sciences, systems theory, and leadership and culture, and then data analysis as well, is very powerful. You will be a changed person. You will be a completely different person at the end of it.
I did have a question though on, for, all the rapid changes and things like that going on with the technology and everything like that on the basic rubric that you're mentioning, as something changes in the future that you probably don't know, does that go into the from the basic rubric or just do another method to add it into the process?
The process doesn't change much. The holistic process, 3-phase, doesn't change much. What's happening is we're bringing in a powerful tool called artificial intelligence, and it's helping us do parts of the process with more accuracy and a lot faster. Like report writing. The report writing at the end, it could be laborious. Now I can have AI do the report for me based on the chart, the image of the chart. So it's a wonderful thing, right? And since the chart is already validated, it's really easy to get it out the door. So, and whatever capabilities we're bringing to the party, they immediately show up in the coursework, the LLM. I mean, not my LLM, my learning management system, which is how we give the courses. So we keep up to date. In fact, I'm doing an audit right now and upgrading our coursework with some new stuff as we speak. And this group going through in August is going to get the latest and greatest of the slides and whatever we're coming up with. So none of you have ever taken BD2 with an AI prompt and a little use of AI. We talk about AI. We haven't been using AI because there's not a lot of time, but Chad and I are in the process of figuring out how to bring AI to Joe and the Miter Saw, Sally, and HF. And we'll figure it out by the time mid-August comes through. And we'll give you some spoon feeding to let new students figure out how the process works and how AI can help you. Amy.
It's been a while since I took BD1 and BD2, like 4 years probably.
Cool.
What kind of refresher would I need if I wanted to do BD3? I'm not sure.
Just sign up for the BD2. The BD2 course, REF, BD2-REF, the refresher. And it's a lot cheaper. It's like a 66% discount. And it starts on Monday. So if you want to jump on, it starts this Monday. In fact, we're letting people in tomorrow just to get an early head start over the weekend. But we give you a Lucid license. We give you 9 case studies worth of Lucid charts. So you get a heavy dose of Lucid charts. There's going to be a tiny bit of use of AI, some spoon feeding of AI. We're not going to go into the level that we do in BD3, of course. But we get people familiar with it. And yeah, a lot has changed in 4 years, Amy. My God, quite a bit.
Is the refreshers every 3 years?
2 years.
2 years.
It
Okay.
almost should be every year at the pace that we're updating our materials because things are changing that fast. Any other questions? Thanks for staying over. Appreciate it. And I'll stay as long as anyone wants. I don't have anything for the rest of my day. So, but it's really nice that you showed up on a July when most people are on vacation. And of course, this recording will be available probably by Monday. It'll be online. And if you have others, you get the email. If you have others that you think would benefit from listening to this presentation, by all means, share it. All right. And with that, let me officially close the July National Forum. We'll see you in August. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.